I want to welcome you to Crounce Hall. My name is Kim Russell, and I'm the coordinator of the English department. I want to give you just a little bit of background on how this event came to be. My sister is a speech language pathologist, and she has a client with a stutter, and had heard about this novel and thought that this might be something that would really speak to her client. And so they read it together. And our children are in a book club together. And she suggested that as we were planning this next year's slate of books, that we could maybe add that to the list. And we did. And later on we were talking, and she said, I just love that book. And wouldn't it be amazing if he would come and see us? Yeah, that's great. You just do that. And she emailed Mr. Vince Vawter, and I think thrilling to both of us, he said yes, and he agreed to be here, and we were so honored to have him. So he has appeared now at the public library with our reading group, and he's gone to 2 elementary schools this morning and has been so wonderfully generous with his time, and we wanted him to be sure and come and talk to the college. I think when you hear a little bit about the subject matter of his book, which is autobiographical in a lot of ways, you'll understand why we felt like it was really important to students who may someday work with clients or have their own students and need to understand a little bit about something. And not only is it a wonderful story inside the mind of someone who's dealing with a certain difficulty, but it touches on so many important, wonderful themes about embracing your differences and who you are and finding your own voice. So we wanted to share that with you all. Mr. Vawter's book was chosen as one of Amazon's best reads in 2013. And as you can see, it was a Newbery Honor Book in 2014, which is not too bad for a debut novel. So without any further ado, let me welcome Vince Vawter.
Thanks, Kim. Is this on now? Yeah, it's on. I've been speaking all morning to 4th and 5th graders, and this crowd is a little bit older than that, so I'll have to change my routine a little bit. I've got several PowerPoint presentations, and I kind of ramble. And so we're going to get through some of these, and I'll probably confuse myself, but I stay confused, and so that's fine. I spent 40 years working in the newspaper business, and I can't remember a time where I didn't think about I should write this book. I didn't know if anyone would publish it. I didn't know if one would read it. But I knew it's a book that should be written. And so when I retired, I set about writing my book. I couldn't be more pleased with what has happened. I've gone to 15 states. I've spoken at, I guess, well over 100 schools. The book, much to my amazement, has been published in 8 foreign languages. I've got a little story I want to tell about that. So what I'm going to do is just explain a little bit about the book. This is just a few of the awards, and we won't go over the. This is a short video about what the book is about.
An 11-year-old boy living in Memphis in 1959 throws the meanest fastball in town, but talking is a whole different ballgame. He can barely say a word without stuttering, not even his own name, so when he takes over his best friend's paper route for the month of July, he knows he'll be forced to communicate with the customers. The paper route poses challenges, but it's a run-in with the neighborhood junk man, a bully and thief that stirs up real trouble and puts the boy's life, as well as that of his family's devoted housekeeper, in danger. Unfolding against the backdrop of the segregated South, Paperboy offers a moving and page-turning story of a boy and his struggle to speak.
And so that tells a little about the book. That is me and my typewriter. When I think I was 8 or 9 there, but I did use my typewriter a lot because if I had problems saying a word during the day, I would go up in my room at night and I would type that word on the typewriter. I got to where I loved words, but I couldn't get them out of my mouth, and so it was so great to have them come out of the ends of my fingers. And so the way the book is written, it tries to show a young man up in his room pouring his heart out on his typewriter, telling this story. And some of the younger students get confused that I wrote this book when I was up in my room. That is not the case. I didn't start writing it until I was 60 years old, and it took me 6 years to write the book. And that's the house I grew up with, house I grew up in, and that's my bicycle that I think that Era T stole. While the book is a novel, while it's fiction, the vast amount of it is the story of my childhood. All the parts that deal with my speech impediment are just spot on, like they actually happened. For instance, sometimes if somebody would ask me my name, I would get a bad speech block, and I would try to say my name, and I couldn't say my name, and I would lose my breath, and I passed out a few times. That's in the book, and that actually happened to me. There's also a scene in the book I think the kids like a lot. I'm kind of at a formal dinner with my parents, and there's a bunch of people around, and we're at an Italian restaurant, and we're eating spaghetti, and somebody says something embarrassing, and I get embarrassed, and I kind of start feeling bad, and I wind up and I blow spaghetti all over the table, and that actually happened. And then I tell about how I would keep a thumbtack in my pocket, and anytime I would have to speak in class, read aloud in class, I would jam that thumbtack into my palm, thinking that the pain of the thumbtack would take away the pain of stuttering, and of course it never does. And so all the parts that deal with my speech are very, very true. A few more things here. Like I said, I'm so excited of the book has gone worldwide. It's been in China. It's in Hebrew, South Korean. If you know about the book, there's the Paperboy, and there's the Junk Man, and there's Ma'am in back, and there's Mr. Spiro. The German edition, they published a wonderful edition. It's their printing over there is just amazing. But they were the only foreign publisher that changed the name of the book, and it's Wörter auf Papier, which is words on paper, which I really liked the name of the book. I thought it was excellent. I talked to the publisher though, and I said, why did you want to change its name? And he said, well, if you translate a Paperboy into German, the connotation is flimsy boy. And I said, well, we can't have any flimsy boys, and so I'm glad you changed the name. I think it's actually in its second printing in Germany, and so I'm proud about that. This is just a funny story. I don't know, it's funny to me. I hope you'll get a kick out of it. I had to work with a lot of translators with the foreign editions. And the translator I had from Japan, he was meticulous. And he was so funny. He spoke extremely good English, you know. And so he called me one day and he said, I'm a little confused. There's a sentence in chapter 17, and it's when you see Ma'am and the junk man has got her up against the wall, choking her, and you say that there was something was coming out of her mouth, and I thought it was blood, and then I saw it was her garrets. Well, in 1959, if you grew up in Memphis, a lot of people, they dipped Garrett snuff, and everybody I kind of had their garrets, you know, and it came in that bottle, and you know, so that's how I wrote it. And well, the first thing he says, he says, well, what exactly is snuff? And so I had to try to explain that to him, which was a challenge because I don't think they ever do that in Japan. But then he started laughing. And he said, Mr. Vawter, I'm so glad I called you because I started checking on the internet and all I could come up with was Garrett's popcorn. And so we almost had popcorn coming out of Ma'am's mouth. So anyway, there's a lot of stories about what you go through when you're translating. Okay. When I won the Newbery Honor, I started getting all these calls from colleges, from education departments, and they had said, please come and talk to us about how to write a children's book. And my first thought is, why in the world are you calling me? I've never considered Paperboy a children's book. I just consider it a story for everybody. I think it can be read by 4th and 5th graders. I think it can be read on a completely new level by adults. It's a story for everybody. I was talking with Kim. What kind of a book really is The Old Man and the Sea? Is that an adult book? Can children read it? Sure, they can read it. It's not going to mean quite as much, but it's a story for everybody. But if they wanted me to come and talk about how to write a children's book, I had to think of something, and I kind of had to think, I kind of had to show them I knew what I was talking about, which I didn't. But anyway, I came up with my 3 rules for writing a children's book, and I really believe in them. And the first one is, don't write a children's book. Write your story, write a good story, and then at some point you may think, okay, if I write this in a certain way, children can read it, but just don't think of it as a children's book, a kid's book, a kid's literature. It's just a story. And I think a part of the success of this was I never thought about writing a children's book. I thought about trying to tell my story in the best way I could, in the simplest way, but yet it does have a lot, I think, of deeper meaning in it. And so rule number 2, write a book that has never been written. When I thought about seriously writing this book, I did a lot of research on every book that had a character in it who stuttered, and there's quite a few of them, and so I looked at them all, and I probably didn't read them all, but I looked at them, and I could not find one that told the story like I thought it should be told, because I had lived the story, and so I think that's important. And then write a book that has a reason to exist. And in talking to classes now, I always get in trouble when I say this, and I'll probably get in trouble today also, but there is nothing wrong with vampires and werewolves and with wizards, but you know, we've had a good run of those. And then I say, and in fact, some of my best friends are vampires and werewolves and wizards and everything. But I think we need to even out the fantasy with something that is real, and so those are my 3 rules. And I try to sound like an expert, but I'm sure I come across as not being one. That's okay though. Let's see. I'm not sure what else. Okay, I do want to talk about this. I've traveled to a lot of schools, and I have been completely blown away by what teachers have done with my book. As I say that, I've said this a lot of times, and it sounds like, you know, a cliche or something, but I have learned so much about my own book from teachers. This is an educator's guide, and it's fabulous. But some of the things we were down at a school in St. Simon's Island, Georgia, and a teacher had done all types of things with what. The thing I liked the best, though, she had the entire class write down on a slip of paper something that was kind of worrying them, and they put them in a pile, and then we went outside, and I dug a big hole in the ground there, and we buried all those slips of paper in the ground, and we covered them up just like the Paperboy did with his story. And I mean, it's something I never would have thought of. A school in California, a large school, a huge school, they had each teacher take something from the book and kind of take that theme and start to run with it. Like, I think in their home economics class, I don't think it's called that anymore. Home living, yeah, that's what it's called now. They fried peach fried pies, like the Paperboy liked. They had I'm sorry, what is some more? This is my wife, by the way. She's my second mind here. I can't.
I love to talk about this. In science, they studied disabilities, what it's like to be in a wheelchair or to stutter or to be blind. In social studies, they studied civil rights. In PE, they threw newspapers. In music class, they developed a 1950s playlist of music, and they had that running on the sound system on the day of the presentation. So everybody was really involved in the 50s setting. It was just really incredible. Every teacher in the school in every discipline bought into it in some way and presented something in the classroom.
Why this is so amazing, as I said, I spent 40 years working in newspapers. And my view of education came from reading stories about school board squabbles and teachers versus the administration and all this and all that. And you kind of get a jaundiced view of what's going on in education. And then I go out to all these schools, and I mean, I've gone to over 100 schools, and I have not had one bad experience. I mean, yeah, some schools are larger, some schools, you know, have more technology, but every school I have gone to has had a group of students, and whether they had read the book or not, they were invested in the story. And I've just got an entirely new view of what's going on in education. I always lose track of time. The last thing I think I want to say, and Carrie Krause said this much better than I can this morning, but when I retired, I thought like everybody else I would be out on the golf course and I would be driving my tractor around and tearing up things and that kind of stuff. You know, that's what I planned on. And I had no idea that I would spend my retirement going from school to school, from Skype to Skype. I probably do an average of, I don't know, 2 Skypes a week, or it's probably not that much. I Skype a lot. with anybody who wants to. I don't charge for Skypes. You know, I Skype with anybody who wants to talk about the book. And so I still stutter. I think it's important, though, for children and for everybody to see me up here stuttering, even though I don't pay any attention to it anymore. I can't tell you if I stutter or not. It's just my voice. I know there is a stutter there. I think it's important, though, for especially young people to see me up here, to see me working through my issues in a positive way. And now, few of the people I talk to have speech impediments. You know, certainly I realize that. But I know that everyone has some kind of issue that is gnawing at them. I had so much problem with my speech when I was a child because I tried to hide it. I tried everything in the world to hide my stutter. And that is absolutely the worst thing a person can do. So I'm, as you know, Kim says that she wasn't sure that she could get me here. She didn't know how easy I was. I'll go out, I'll crawl to places to talk about my book.